should I have not done this at all? Like, what could I do different? Where would I be? It's so many questions, and then yeah, it's spiraling.
And sometimes you just need that, like a second opinion of someone, which is why I feel like this podcast is important for anyone who's listening, because you need someone else sometimes to make you realize that.
You know what they say? Desperate times call for.
Wondering why everyone our age seems so far ahead while we're busy starting over.
If you've been there or you're there, this one's for you.
This is Desperate Times.
Welcome back to another episode of Desperate Times. It's been 3 months since we started this podcast, and although we're still starting out, it still feels like a long, long time. And so,
hmm
this episode is going to be all about starting over and how sometimes we may feel like we're behind in life.
But before we dive into all of that, let's just make sure that if you're an audio listener, you should be going on to Spotify or Apple Podcast and rating and reviewing our podcast. It really helps us a lot. So yeah, let's dive right into it. Sakshi, what has your experience been like? Do you feel like, as we rightly mentioned in our intro, are you having those feelings every now and then of like lagging behind in your life? What's it like for you?
It's like a yo-yo situation, I want to say, honestly, because
hmm
sometimes I feel like, oh, if I hadn't done this, then I would be doing this or I would be here. And you look at
hmm
other people who didn't quite start over like we did. And by start over, we mean that we moved to a different country for postgraduate studies. But of course,
hmm
there are other ways that people do about it, like they do their grad and then they do their postgrad together. So that way, you're not starting over, but finishing all your studies in one go. But that's
hmm
not the route that we took, Varun, did we?
Nope, not at all. We moved to a new country, started everything all over again from ground zero. And what that also does is it puts us in a situation where anything that we had planned for our lives prior to coming here is just kind of put behind and started all over again. Also, we have to keep in mind that we at in our 20s have gone through the pandemic, right? That also put us in a different kind of slump altogether.
Oh
While
yeah,
the pandemic is kind of a slump that everyone faced in their life,
everyone.
for us it
Yeah.
kind of doubled it up on itself and put us
Yep.
behind on those benchmarks that everyone kind of sets for themselves of like at
Yep.
20 I want to do this, at 22 I want to do that. It just
Yep.
resets everything.
And while we're talking about the pandemic, it actually, like you said, it gave a restart for a lot of people. For me, it was quite real because until the pandemic, I was
hmm
sort of going from one job to another to another. I did not have a lot of breaks, but come
hmm
pandemic, I was working as a social media executive for a restaurant in Mumbai, and it was a restaurant, and like that was, I think, the most heavy hit industry during the pandemic.
hmm
Deliveries also started much later, so they had to let literally all the staff go. So I was not working that time for about 6 to 8 months before I actually got my proper job. And
hmm
that was basically the first half of the pandemic. So yes, I did have a restart then. And then I pushed all the way through it and then be like, oh, this time I'm going to choose the restart for myself and go do post grad studies. And that's a different kind of restart.
Which in some ways is good because you're doing what's most needed for you, but I can only imagine how tough it is for people who were facing the pandemic and then having to like be in a position where their careers had to like take a pause because of, as you mentioned, for you, the restaurant had to shut down, people had to be let go,
Uh-huh.
whatever that was. So that setback only kickstarts this whole situation of like, okay, now I'm set back in one way, now I'm set back in another. And that I'm sure must be really tough for you back then.
I mean, it was tough on like my self-confidence finding a job, but then that was
Mm-hmm.
basically the whole world going through the same thing. So in some ways it was not that bad.
True.
And I was actively looking for a job or looking to like upskill myself. So I even enrolled in like a online diploma and everything was online back then, right? Like that was like
Right.
work from home. It was a new thing that everyone was trying out.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to upskill myself that way. So that was good. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was a lot of adjusting because it's a new style of working. Like right now, remote working and hybrid working is the norm. But back
Mm-hmm.
then, it was very foreign. Everyone was figuring things out and no one knew what was going on.
Yep.
So that was a different kind of restart. But talking about the restart that we made consciously,
hmm
like no one put a gun to our head and said, you have to do this. This was our
Yeah.
choice. And like Varun said, in some ways that is good because you're again trying to upskill yourself, build a life for yourself. But it makes you think and wonder sometimes that did I make the right choice? And
hmm
did that question ever pop into your head, Varun?
Plenty of times. And I've had instances where even maybe as recent as 1 or 2 years ago, where I had that feeling of, oh no, what's going on? I'm not where I'm supposed to be in terms of like all the points that you kind of set for yourself at certain ages. Because to give context, just pre-pandemic for me, my situation was not much like yours. I had more of a stable thing kind of going on for me, where I was just had just taken up my first big gig in a advertising agency, and I had just gotten to that point where I had like probably saved enough to like get myself a car for myself, even if it's secondhand. But at the age of like 24, 25, I was closer to that point of, okay, now is the age where I get myself a car. And then after that, I can like start hitting those other benchmarks for myself. But the pandemic
Mhm.
just like put a wrench into that plan and put a big stop to all of that. That already was like my first setback of, okay, things are not as per what I planned in terms of where I want to be at what age of my life. But
Mhm.
also, it's important to understand that all of these things that you're putting yourself for as like of doing this at a certain age, that at a certain age, it's all a bunch of bullshit. No one has to be doing a
Pretty
certain
much.
thing at a certain age, right?
Yeah,
So
for sure.
that's
It's
definitely important for us to understand.
Yeah, and I mean, life is not linear, and the pandemic did make a lot of people understand that everything doesn't go as per plans, and
Hmm.
sometimes it's that harsh reality that you have to face to realize that. And I think I have gone through that more times than not, just because
Hmm.
after moving to Canada, doing your postgrad studies, and then you give in another reality check that even though you come from like experience, you've worked in the industry, but you don't have that Canadian experience. So that's another restart that you hit in your
Hmm.
career. And in some ways, I did not really have that, but I did. It's kind of a weird situation because back home, before leaving for Canada and coming here, I was literally getting headhunted, and
Hmm.
which means that recruiters reach out to you in case you don't know, and you're basically one of the top candidates that they want to interview and get for that job. And I was recommending other friends and people for that role just because I was like, no, no, I just want to be in my job right now because I have to leave in a couple of months anyway.
Hmm.
So I wasn't even considering it. So going from getting headhunted to coming here and literally like meeting people, talking to people, understanding how it all works and finding a job, like that's the restart. And that's where it sort of hit me. And I'm like, had I stayed back home, I didn't even have to look for a job. Like people
Hmm.
were looking for me. So I didn't have to do the hard work, the grind that I'm doing
Yep.
here. But in some ways, like that's another story for another day. That's taught me a couple of other lessons and things to learn as well. But you really think about it because you
Yeah.
restart in your career and the kind of pay that you get, the position that you
Yep.
have changes a whole lot.
Absolutely. I mean, that's something even I every now and then see that when you're going up on LinkedIn, you're seeing all these colleagues of yours who you used to work with who probably would be at the same or lower designation as you even sometimes. And
Yeah.
when you look at the designations that they're at right now, they're already like reaching close to like director level for some of them even. And here we are kind of like starting again, looking at like the most junior level, entry level positions all over again, despite having like 3 to 4 years of experience coming into it
Mhm.
and relevant experience at that even. So that
Yeah.
setback from time to time does kind of hit a little, but you have to kind of keep giving yourself the realization again that, hey, those people have stayed where they are. They had the kind of stability. Obviously, they chose it. And as you mentioned rightly, we chose this for ourselves of kind of
Right.
restarting and in a new country. And that comes with its own levels of like,
For
hey, you're
sure.
going to get a setback. You have to know it, acknowledge it. You're doing a big thing,
Prepare.
and not
Yeah.
everyone is doing it.
Yeah, and while you were talking about that one person being a director, I think I had someone, and the other restart that we didn't talk about is the career pivot that we made, right? That was
Hmm.
another restart that we chose consciously for ourselves. So that's
Correct.
the other thing. People who stuck in the hospitality industry, I think that's what you were referring to as someone becoming a director. And rightly so, they've been in that industry for about 7, 8 years now. So that
Yeah.
trajectory does make sense for them. But we had like basically one restart with career pivot, the other one with the pandemic, and then the third
Hmm.
one with postgraduate studies. Two chosen by us, one not chosen by us. But you learn lessons along the way. But there's a lot of
Hmm.
introspection that goes on, and it doesn't have to be if you've moved countries, but if you've restarted your
Hmm.
career as well. You look at other people who've been there for that long and they've put in their work, and you're like, when will I get there?
Have you ever had a moment, though? Because I know I have, and I can speak about that briefly after I ask you yours. But did you ever have like a specific moment where you kind of were just like not happy, not exactly not happy, but not exactly knowing where you're standing and like having this entire mental breakdown of, oh no, what's going on? I'm not where I'm supposed to be. Have you had one of those? And what was that like for you?
All the time. Oh my God. I think I have that every few months. And that's the
Okay.
other thing on the outside. Like people don't really see it just because, oh my God, we're podcasters now. Or, oh my God, I am posting on LinkedIn and sharing things. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
what 10% of the life, like we've spoken in like the earlier episodes, like much earlier if you've been here from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But essentially those breakdowns and everything is something that we don't share with the world. And I have that every couple of months where I am thinking about where am I? Did I make the right
Mm-hmm.
decision? Should I have done this earlier? Like a lot of people in my class when I was doing my studies had come right after graduation. So
Right.
that was not a that much of a restart for them, wherein they're just going from one study to another and they've not really gotten into the industry yet, started working. So that way they're not losing out on positions, on job roles.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, should I have come here earlier? Should I have not done this at all? Like, what could I do different? Where would I be? It's so many questions, and then yeah, it's spiraling, right? Like, if you want to
Yeah.
spiral, you can spiral. Like, it's easy. It's very easy. I wanna say the
Yeah.
hard job is to stay on track and be like, this is gonna be worth something someday.
And sometimes you just need that, like a second opinion of someone, which is why I feel like this podcast is important for anyone who's listening, because you need someone else sometimes to make you realize that. And that's what my experience, one specific experience was when I was kind of spiraling and crashing. For me, this was, I think, still when I was still pursuing my master's about a year and a half or two ago, probably just my early second year into my master's. And a very close friend of mine and I were just sitting in the library. We were both working on our assignments. I was probably doing something for my thesis. And just at close to, I'm going into specifics, maybe even close to midnight when both of us were working on our things, I just completely started spiraling and crashing because my
Oh
while I was
no.
doing my assignment, my head was at, oh no, people my age are really further ahead.
Yeah.
People are getting married, people are getting engaged, people are buying cars every day, people are getting these new fancy apartments for themselves every
Yeah.
day, people are getting their promotions every day. And here I am sitting in this library. I still don't know when I'm going to graduate. I still don't know when I'm going to get a job. What am I going to get? Am I going to get a good one? Which city am I going to be in? I have no idea about anything in my life. And that spiral was kind of really bad. But at that moment, the friend sitting right next to me just stopped me right there. And he was like, you know what? You need to just realize that you have moved to a new country. You
Yeah.
have started everything all over again. It's not going to be the same. And what you've done is also a really big step, which others have not taken. And
Yeah.
that then kind of, him just saying this thing that I already pretty much knew made me realize that, you know what? He is kind of right. Everyone else has not had the same trajectory as
Yeah.
I have. So it's not necessary for me to be on the same trajectory as they have been.
Exactly. I mean, your friend being there was God's grace, to be honest, because
Hmm.
when you go into those spirals, you really do need someone to pull you out of it because it's like you dug a hole for yourself and then you're trying to climb
Yep.
out of it. No, you can't do that. You need someone else's hand in there to pull you out of that hole. So I'm glad you
Hmm.
had that friend for you to say those wise words and get you feeling better because think about it. Like, at least for me, I don't think any of my family members have
Hmm.
actually moved out, started their whole life again. And I mean, after I did move out of India, some people did, but I
Hmm.
don't think a lot of people have. And then even starting a podcast for that matter, I was just
Hmm.
thinking about it the other day. I was like, oh, I don't think I know anyone in my circle that has started a podcast. So, I
Hmm.
mean, while I'm too harsh on myself about it, I mean, I should also celebrate that we've actually started something like this. And like you said, like their trajectory and your trajectory is not gonna be the same just
Yep.
because paths are so different right from the beginning. And I feel like we're just so hard on ourselves and other people cannot really see it, right? And we
Hmm.
think, oh my God, what is this gonna be and that gonna be? But the other person's not even thinking about that because they're too busy thinking about themselves and their lives. They do not have the
Yep.
time to think about your life or what you're doing. So it's just
Hmm.
you being that, person that's holding yourself back. And with this career restart, even it's just a different ball game. It's not just career restart, but life restart.
Which brings me back a little to the point of, since you mentioned that it's good that I had that one friend by my side. It's something that we mentioned in one of our previous episodes that just having these 2 to 3 friends who you can really depend on makes a hell lot of a difference. So if you want to watch that episode on knowing all about making friends, here's the shameless plug that I'm going to put in for you.
I mean, I might as well. It's our podcast. We decide, but
Hmm.
not to
And
sound too cocky, guys.
Yep. And if you
So
want to know
that
why we started this podcast and being real about what we're talking about right now, that episode is also going to be here for you. I'm just going to plug everything that I can right now.
yeah, just go watch the whole thing if you haven't. A lot of y'all are actually not subscribed on a lot of our platforms.
Hmm.
A lot of y'all are. So whoever is not subscribed, you're just watching random episodes here and there or tuning in. These are basically call outs for you to watch the entire thing and then you learn more.
Yep. But yeah, coming back to the kind of setbacks that you feel, uh, when I say setbacks or kind of falling behind in life, this is not only associated with people back at home. It's also important to acknowledge that this is also going to be, also going to have these feelings for people who are here, right?
Yeah.
Because let's say I have friends who have just graduated from their undergrad versus me who has just gotten my master's degree. It's important to acknowledge that in today's economy, your degree, whether it's an undergrad degree or a master's degree, moving to a new country, it's probably not going to make a big difference. And you're probably still going to start at the same level with very similar, if not slightly more pays. So
For
that
sure.
feeling of kind of being set back in life is going to hit then again when you see that your salary versus someone who's just started as a complete fresher with no experience is not going to be too different.
And it's not even about no experience at this point. Like if you've moved countries, that is, and someone who's
Hmm.
born and brought up here has been working part-time jobs since they were a teenager, since they were in high school. So they understand the culture, the people more.
Hmm.
They've born here, they're brought up here. And when companies look to hire, although that person might not have any direct experience in their own field, but because they've worked before with people, they understand that this person might be able to pick up on nuances quicker than you would. They're a clean
Hmm.
slate. Hiring them might be better interest for them than you, just because they have to teach you everything. And although you might have relevant experience, you don't understand the nuances yet. So that's
Hmm.
another thing that sometimes that comes to my mind is like, we're actually competing with people that were born and brought up here. And it's not even competing in the sense that it's a competition. It's more about just where you are in life and
Hmm.
what that brings you and what that serves you.
For sure, for sure. Now that's more from a career point of view, but from like a personal point of view, are there some aspects that you feel like, oh no, life is moving too far ahead and I'm kind of back? Because I see that now a little bit, and not like this matters to me all too much, but
Mhm.
every other day I'm going on Instagram, there's someone getting engaged for God's sake.
Yeah, honestly, I have that too. Like, either someone's getting engaged, someone's getting married, or someone's even having a baby. So from that
Hmm.
front, there's like a lot of things going on, and yeah, I'm happy for them, and that's it. Like, I leave it at that. I don't dwell on it just because that's
Hmm.
a spiral that I do not wish to do. The
Yeah.
other one that I notice a lot, not notice a lot, but I feel personally is because we've moved and everything, we're away from family. That's
Hmm.
another feeling of being left behind, but this is something
Hmm.
that you left behind. So that's another
Hmm.
thing where you think about and be like, is it worth it? Am I doing the right thing? Right. So that definitely comes to mind.
And this definitely hits a little harder on those special festive occasions that come
Oh, yeah.
by. Because I remember, I think this was my first Diwali after having moved here. It
God.
just felt
No.
so lonely. And I was in the middle of my exams back then, so I couldn't even like have the opportunity to celebrate it as I would like to. And that just made me one nostalgic, but like nostalgic not in a good way, nostalgic more in a sad way, where I found myself just sitting in my room writing some poetry for myself about how it feels like being away from home. And then as I was writing that poetry, I found myself just suddenly crying in the middle of it. But that's again, as you said, it's a part of like leaving something behind and then just feeling a little left out in the process of it.
And while you're talking about your first festival here, I very, very well remember that the first Diwali here was me onboarding at my part-time job that I had landed there, and most of us over there were like Indians when we were
Hmm.
onboarding, and I was like, by the way, guys, happy Diwali. So from 9 to 5, I've been onboarding over there, and it's Diwali, and then I've come home and I'm just tired and cranky, and I've lost it.
Hmm.
I've had a breakdown right there because I'm like, what am I doing? Like,
Hmm.
this is not the Diwali that I remember. It's like not good. And then birthdays too, at least for me,
Hmm.
that was another thing with the first birthday when it comes around, right? It's just like,
Hmm.
why am I here?
Hmm.
What am I doing? Like, I had that too. I had another breakdown then.
Hmm.
It's just those big milestones, like you mentioned, like they just hit
Yeah.
harder, and you have to accept the fact that this is a choice you
Hmm.
made, and you made the bed, you lie in it.
Yeah. But that being said, it doesn't always have to mean that this is how things are going to be. While literally making a bed and lying in it means that it is how it is. But at the
Yeah.
same time, you can take it in your hands to kind of make this better for you. Like, as I said, my first Diwali, terrible, middle of exams, emotionally breaking down, being away from family. But in contrast to that, the second one, though, I had like a good set of friends by then of probably like 15 to 17 people who my roommates and I could just host at our place, introduce them to our culture, make a whole Diwali party out of it. And then
Wow.
that year, I did not feel lonely or like away from home or homesick in any capacity. So you make these choices, you feel left behind, but there's always something that you can do about it if you choose to.
For sure. And I mean, make the bed and lie in it. It's like, you can change that bed, guys. Like, it's all in your
Yeah,
hand. Like,
buy
you're
a new
making
one.
that
If
bed. So,
yeah, you
yeah,
can
like,
come
buy a
in
new
when you come
one.
into the you come into the country, live on a twin bed, then eventually just go onto a king size bed for all you know, right?
Yeah, why not? And that's the other thing. Like, on Instagram too, you would onward like having like engagements and marriage, weddings and stuff like that.
Mm.
People on vacation. I think that is what I
Oh yeah.
look at, and I'm like, because when you're studying, you're working a part-time job, you're finding a job. There's not a lot of whole like space to go on a vacation or afford a vacation. And then you
Hmm.
think about it, like, had I been back home, I had saved that much money that I could easily afford a vacation. I was doing this, I was doing that. And that's another type of restart where your
Hmm.
expectations have to reset.
And talking about vacations, as you were saying, what I realize is that sure, these people are being able to take all these fancy vacations as they want all year round every now and then. But then I kind of think about it, and this is the kind of trade-off that we've made to have a better quality of life, right? Like having moved to this country, I see that sure, right now I'm not in a position where I take those vacations every day, but when I come back home versus majority of the year when those guys go back home, it is drastically different. And I kind of prefer this upgrade of quality of life overall rather than having those bouts of like going on those 10 days of vacations to get an escape from where you are. I don't necessarily feel that need to escape as
Hmm.
much anymore. So it's kind of a choice that you make for yourself eventually and the trade-off that you choose.
And while we're talking about like choices and perceptions and what is happening, here's your choice to subscribe,
Mm-hmm.
follow, and give us a comment if there was anything that resonated with you in this
Mm-hmm.
episode. And also let us know what you want to hear from us in the future. That really helps us build this podcast more curated for you guys. And with
Mm-hmm.
that, we'll leave you with that thought and see you next week. Bye.
Bye.